All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you for giving me a few moments here to talk a little bit about Prospa and what we're doing here in the Fintech space down in Australia. Firstly, just want to introduce myself. So, Beau Bertoli, the CEO and co-founder at Prospa. We're about 5 years old in the Fintech space. So we actually were born before the word Fintech even came about, quite interestingly. So it's great to be here and actually talk about our business and where we see really Fintech going. When we started Prospa, we started like every startup where we had an idea, we had a customer problem, and we created a product. And we wanted to see whether or not that product would be bought by a customer. So what do? You start doing a bit of marketing. You start with a bit of AdWords, you start doing some digital or other means of customer acquisition. And lo and behold, people started hitting our website. They started calling our 1300 numbers, and we started to find customers where we were solving their problem, and they're actually paying us to do it. So it was quite an interesting experience when you're starting up a business. You just don't know what's going to happen. And we're very fortunate in those early days, back 5 years ago, that we had a lot of initial success. And as we started to write more and more loans in our business, we are an online business lender. We started to ask the question that was quite interesting hearing the panel. In fact, Hamish's view around how hard it is to do business in Australia, and we certainly echo that, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs would, that Australia's a very hard place to do business. And we asked this question of, can Aussies actually scale or achieve scale in Fintech? And as I mentioned, Prospa was born before the word Fintech was really even around. So when we started, we were in online business lending, then there was payments, now there's cryptocurrencies, a whole series of other fintech or components now to fintech. So I'm going to ask this question and specifically relate it to lending, and lending from an Australian startup's perspective, and whether or not we can actually achieve scale like some of the global companies have right around the world. So in order to actually I suppose, form a view on can we achieve scale, we actually need to have a definition of, well, what does scale actually mean in relation to an Aussie fintech in lending? So we're going to put a stake in the ground. This is our view, Prospa's view on what scale in lending actually means from an Australian perspective. People might disagree, it might be different on a global scale, but this is what we think scale looks like from an Australian perspective. So we think that an Australian fintech lender has achieved scale when they are originating $1 billion in loans per annum, or $100 million in revenue, if that happens to be their business model. And they're doing it where every new loan they write is at a lower cost per loan. And to give us an idea, that's about 80 mil a month, give or take, which when we actually sum up the whole lending market, both in the SME space and the consumer space, we're not even at $1 billion a year in terms of Australian fintech at this point. So what does that work out to be in terms of customers? It works out to be about 8,000 consumers a month if we work on the average loan size in consumer land, which is about 10 grand. Or it works out to be about 4,000 SMEs a month, where the average loan size is about 20 grand. So when we start to think about the numbers of customers required to achieve scale, we look at about 100,000 consumers or 50,000 small business owners. All of a sudden you start to think that this is possible. And we're here today to talk a little bit about what Prospa's doing and I suppose trying to lead the charge in this whole scale play within the Australian market. Now firstly, why is scale important? Now, Hamish's comment about how hard it is to do business in Australia is so true, and in particular in relation to setting up and scaling up an organisation out of Australia. There's not many that actually get there, particularly on global comparables. But the reality is that there's one sector of the Australian economy that is absolutely ripe for disruption, and that is financial services. And I'll put it up here, you can see that Australia is in the top 10 most profitable banking sectors in the world by profit. And you can see there between $35–40 billion a year in profit. In fact, it's probably going to be bigger this year. We've just seen some of the recent announcements from the banks. So there is an awful lot of profit floating around. And when you think about what makes conditions ripe for disruption, there's got to be a big problem, there's got to be a lot of profit involved, and typically there's got to be incumbents that are very slow, if not incapable of actually innovating. And you think about financial services in Australia, we have all of those conditions in place. Now, finance is also very important as an economic part of Australia, and it represents 10% of our economy. So In terms of creating a scalable play, it is very important that we do this from an Australian perspective because it is over 10% of our economy and over $100 billion of economic activity. And the reality is very simple, that if we don't do it as Australian fintechs and actually step up and do scale up these businesses, somebody else will. And I don't think there's a logo up there that wouldn't be familiar to everyone in this room. Yeah, we call these guys the Bank of Tech, and there is enormous change happening and about to happen in global finance. And these guys are leading the charge, even though it might not be obvious. Now, you may not be aware, but every single brand up there has some type of financial services product, either in the Australian market or on the cusp of entering the Australian market. In fact, in some cases, they have global presence that's quite scary. I mean, Facebook, for example, just applied for a banking license in America in December. And you might have seen that they're actually testing a peer-to-peer payments network where you and I, if we're friends on Facebook, we can now send each other, or will be able to send each other payments through their mediums. Across all of these guys, they have the data, they have the customer insights, they have access to immense development houses and insights into building great products and great solutions for their customers. And they do take a customer-centric view. You know, these companies are amongst the highestly engaged companies in the world. So we have to do it, or someone else will, because all these guys are coming, they're creating lending products, and if they're not here already, they will be here very, very soon. So is fintech scale possible in Australia? When we think about the market, this is what the market actually looked like when we started, going back about 5 years now. There was us and a couple other brands in the consumer and the commercial lending space. Today it looks something like this. I couldn't fit all logos on, so to make it look pretty, we put enough on there. There's actually more brands than you'll see here. In the last 12 months, we've seen about 15 new entrants into this market. So this is an area of hot activity in the Australian economy. And for very good reason. As I said, there is billions and billions of dollars at stake here. And there are incumbents that are not solving customer problems. They are not coming at it from a customer-centric perspective, whereas all these brands are. They're putting the customer first and foremost, and then trying to create a scalable solution off the back of it. When we think about the market, if we look at the globe, around the world, we can see markets that are incredibly well established, years ahead of Australia in many cases. The USA as a market is about 9 times the size of Australia as a percentage. If we look at the UK, they're also significantly larger than us. So it has happened, and there is global precedent for fintechs in the lending space to become serious competitors to the banking system. And in relation to particularly SME lending, where Prospa plays, I'm going to talk a little bit about Prospa in a moment as well, and some of the things that we've achieved. We look at the market as about a $20 billion opportunity, and we know that at any point in time, around 20% of small businesses are looking for finance. Whether they go to their bank, they go to their accountant, they go to their finance broker or some other advisor, they're looking for finance. And that means at any point in time, there's up to $4 billion of an addressable market there. And if you get a quarter of that as a market share, then it is absolutely possible to be doing well north of $1 billion a year in originations, which means that we can achieve scale as an Australian fintech. So how is Prospa going as an organisation? So as I mentioned, we're into our 5th year now. We have just passed through $250 million in funding, in loans, since our inception. And we expect to pass through $500 million this year. So as an organisation, I certainly wouldn't say that Prospa's achieved scale at the level that we define scale and that we're aspiring to, but we're certainly well on the way and one of the pioneers in this space. We also look at other performance measures in our business and we think about, well, what does it take to achieve scale? It's not just about being the fastest car, fastest to get there. It's about building sustainability. And I think the panel we just had up here were awesome to hear some organisations that were started by entrepreneurs that are now just absolutely outstanding examples of Australian success that have really stood the test of time. So we look at other performance measures in our business to get a sense of how well we're doing and whether we're building a sustainable business or not. This is our journey. Prospa, we started and wrote our first loan. It'll be 5 years ago in July. So pretty exciting to be here in business 5 years later and get well and truly through that startup hump, as many entrepreneurs will be familiar with. We've had an amazing run. We were some of the first to create an online end-to-end experience for customers. We were the first to create online digital document execution for contracts. Our customers now receive access to their finance in less than 24 hours, and if they're an existing customer, it's just about always same day. So we've really been pioneering the whole journey of customer experience and putting our customers at the centre of everything we do. And that plays out not just in our results, but also in our NPS. And we've got an NPS here of 77. That's a measurement that's been that way for almost a year of measuring that now. We obviously love to compare it to the banks and some other companies out there, but we're really proud of the way that we engage our customers, the way that we take a very customer-centric view. Greg, the co-founder, and myself, we've both been small business owners, so we understand what it is to run a small business and to go through the pain of being a small business owner. And we're very, very passionate about our customers. We've also gotten a lot of recognition through different awards, and this is great for our organisation, both from a team perspective and also proof points to our customers that we do take very seriously what we do. We're not just trying to create this billion-dollar revenue business in the space of a couple of days, but we're trying to build a sustainable business that really is underpinned by great execution and an amazing team. So I'm not going to go through all the awards, but plenty of them have been up there, and it's great to get that external recognition of what we've been able to achieve. And internally, we take our people incredibly seriously. We employ about 120 people now. They are all here in Australia. We don't have any offshore functions in our business. And we've got an engagement rating of over 83%, which puts us in an employer of choice category. And we're very, very proud of that because we need to attract more and more Australian talent to organisations like Prospa and some of the other companies that you'll hear about, no doubt, later on today. Just wanted to touch on our products. So we've created, I suppose, a model where we try to make the complex simple. When we think about our product, it's to provide a small business owner with a loan on a website. That makes it sound really simple. Behind the scenes, there is an awful lot of complexity that goes into it. Thousands of data points, lots of APIs, lots of complexity in terms of what we've built. Great to obviously hear the automation and in particular machine learning conversations earlier as well. That is at the forefront of what we think about. Prospa was born in the cloud, so we can take advantage of all the wonderful new technologies and not be stuck with these incumbent systems that really slow us down. And we also distribute our product through over 4,000 partners now, and they're all around the Australian economy. They range from accountants to finance brokers to even up to some of the banks as well. And we've created a system and a really easy way for our partners to get our product to their customers. And you can see some of the ideas here around, we've had to take a bank level lens in terms of security, but we've also tried to make the front end incredibly easy and beautiful to experience from a customer perspective. So just to wrap it up, if we sum it up around, what does it take to scale a lending business here in Australia? Well, we think it takes the following things to bring it all together. And we're hoping that Prospa is an example on the road to mass scale here in Australia. So the first thing it takes is a big problem. And in Australia, we have a massive lending problem for small businesses. It takes us a problem where the banks can't or they won't be able to innovate and create a product. There are some products that the banks do incredibly well, and there are some that they really struggled to be able to deliver. If they do a product really well, we can't necessarily build a better product than them. So a credit card would be an example of that potentially. It does take access to large amounts of capital. If you want to write $1 billion a year or $2 or $3 or $5 billion a year, you've got to have access to that capital. And it's great to see there is this globalization of capital happening where capital markets are very open to putting money into the Australian economy. Talent is the one thing that in the fintech community, we're trying to get great talent out of other technology companies. Australia is very fortunate. We have a lot of great technology companies. And in fintech, we want to rip them out and bring them across to us and help us build this revolution that's happening in financial services. So we've got to find great talent. We've got to find great distribution. We do need a supportive government. And in Australia, we've been very fortunate to have both state and federal governments that are very big proponents of fintech and want to see Australian financial services disrupted from within Australia as opposed to the internationals. You got to have focus. We can't be all things to all people. And at Prospa, we're very focused on the commercial finance lending space. And finally, it does take a little bit of timing. And as I mentioned earlier, we feel that the conditions for disruption in Australian financial services are ripe. We have lots of profit. We have a serious customer problem. And we have incumbents that are not coming at it from a customer-centric view. So everything's right here for us to be able to build businesses of scale in Australia, and hopefully, as I mentioned, Prospa is a leading example of that and on the path to achieving that over the next couple of years. So thank you.